fraction operations. So this isn't one of the traditional chapter 1 lessons, but it is a super good review for all of you guys, and it is very important moving forward throughout the school year. So when looking at fraction operations, the first vocab term we need to talk about is the least common multiple, or the LCM. So the least common multiple is the smallest positive integer that is a multiple of two or more numbers. So if I say find the least common multiple of 7 and 9, the first thing we need to do is list the multiples of 7 and 9. So multiples are numbers that you can multiply from 9. So if we were to think about this, 9 times 1 gives us 9. 9 times 2, 18. 9 times 3, 27. Times 4, 36. Times 5 is 45. Times 6 is 54. Times 7 is 63. Times 8 is 72. 9 times 9 is 81. So on and so forth. We could keep going forever, but we just need to list a couple because we are trying to find the smallest one that is common between these two numbers. Next, we can do the same for 7. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. Times 4 is 28. Times 5 is 35. Times 6 is 42. 7 times 7 is 49. Times 8 is 56. Times 9 is 63. So on and so forth. And we have found a common one. So starting left to right on each of these lists, our least common multiple is going to be 63 for this one. So if I was to have a question like this on a test or quiz, I would want you guys to format this correctly. So how you format this is you write LCM of our two numbers, 7 and 9, equals 63. And that is how you would format one of those answers. So how the least common multiple plays into fraction operations is we use it for adding and subtracting. So when adding and subtracting fractions, and we'll talk about this just a little later, you need to have a common multiple. So right now we have 1/9 plus 2/7. So the reason we found the LCM of 7 and 9 is because those are both of our denominators. So in order to make our denominators equal, we need both of those denominators to become our LCM, or 63. So we have to ask ourselves, what times 9 gives us 63? You guys should know that that is 7. So we are going to multiply our first fraction by 7 over 7. Then for our second fraction, we also need to have a denominator of 63. So 7 times what is 63? Obviously that's 9. So we're going to multiply this fraction by 9 over 9. So multiplying our first fraction, we have to multiply straight across the top. So I've got 7 times 1, which gives me 7, over 7 times 9, which is 63. Plus, now in our second fraction, I have 2 times 9, which is 18, over 7 times 9, which is 63. So now for adding, we're going to add straight across the top and straight across Well, the denominator does not change. So we will actually leave 63 as our denominator. So then we would have 63 over 7 times 18, which is 25. And that is our answer for that one. We'll talk a little bit more about adding and subtracting just a bit later here. So the second vocab term for this lesson is the greatest common factor. So greatest common factor, or GCF, is the greatest positive integer that divides two or more numbers. So what we want to do is list the factors of both 12 and 20. So let's go down the list. 1 times what gives us 12? Well, that will give me 1 and 12. 2 times what gives me 12? Well, 2 and 6. 3 times what gives me 12? 3 and 4. And those are all of our factors of 12. Similarly, with 20, I would have 1 times 20 gives me 20. 2 times 10 gives me 20. 3 times nothing gives me 20. So 4 times 5 gives me 20. And now I've made it all the way around the loop. So the greatest number that is a part of both of these lists, starting right to left, would be 4. So similarly to LCM, we are going to format our answer the same way. So the greatest common factor of 12 and 20 equals 4. And that is how I want you guys to format your answers. So the reason we learned about the greatest common factor is that is how we simplify our fractions. So if I gave you the fraction 12 over 20, this can be simplified because there's a greatest common factor besides 1 of 12 and 20. So essentially what we do here is we're going to divide both our numerator and our denominator by our greatest common factor, or 4. So 12 divided by 4 is going to give me 3, and 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. So 3/5 is how you simplify the fraction 12/20ths, or 12 over 20. Okay, so now let's go over the steps here. So first of all, we're going to go over the steps for adding or subtracting fractions. So when adding or subtracting fractions, the first thing we need to do is find a common denominator, which is what I already showed you in the previous example. Then we are going to add or subtract the numerators. So add or subtract the numerators. Remember, the denominators do not change. And then the last thing we do is you have to make sure that you simplify if possible. Okay, let's go on to the next page here. So let's go over one example of adding or subtracting. So I already kind of showed you guys an example of adding, so let's do this example of subtracting. So the first thing we need to do here, so we have 7/9 minus 2/3. So the first thing we need to do here is find the greatest common, well actually, the least common multiple of 9 and 3. So the nice thing with 9 and 3 is it is a fairly straightforward LCM. So if we were to start with 3, 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, so on and so forth. And with 9, 9 times 1 is 9. So we don't even need to go very far, because clearly 9 is going to be my LCM of 3 and 9. So what that means is 9 is going to be our common denominator between both of these two fractions. So my first fraction here, I have 7/9, so I don't need to do anything to that denominator. But for my second fraction, I need to make the denominator 9, so I'll have to take 3 times 3. So doing this, my first fraction stays the same, minus, then multiply my numerator, so 2 times 3 gives me 6, and then 3 times 3 gives me 9. This is an equivalent fraction to what I just started with. So now we have a common denominator, so let's go ahead and subtract the numerators. So 7 minus 6 is 1, and remember, nothing changes with the denominator. The last step here is we need to make sure that we cannot simplify our fractions. Anytime you have a 1 in the numerator, you cannot simplify your fraction, so that is our final answer. So you guys saw me do an addition example. You see me do a subtraction. So try the second addition example on your own. Start with finding the LCM between 3 and 4. Okay, the next thing we're looking at is multiplying fractions. So multiplying fractions is pretty straightforward. You multiply straight across the numerator. Then you'll multiply straight across the denominator. And then your final step is to simplify. Okay, so multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, and then simplify your fractions. So our first example here, I have 1/2 times 7/8. So let's multiply straight across the top in the numerator and straight across the bottom in the denominator. So 1 times 7 gives me 7. 2 times 8 gives me 16. Then you have to check, can you simplify either of these? Well, if you found a greatest common factor between 7 and 16, you will notice that is 1, so you cannot simplify this fraction at all. Similarly, try the second example here on your own. We will go over it together in class. The second example here, you will be able to simplify it, so look out for that. Okay, the final topic here is dividing fractions. So we have a little acronym for dividing fractions. We call this the keep, change, flip method. So how that works is you will keep the first fraction exactly how it's written. Then what you'll do is you'll change the sign from division to multiplication. And then finally, you will flip the second fraction. All right, so let's keep, change, flip this example. So I have 7/9 divided by 2/5. So let's go ahead. We will keep our first fraction. So I've got 7/9. Then I will change my division symbol to multiplication. And then I will flip my second fraction. So instead of 2/5, it will become 5/2. Now, instead of a division problem, we have a multiplication problem. So I have 7 times 5, which is 35. 9 times 2, which is 18. Last step here, once again, we'll have to check to see if we can simplify it. And I would show you this, but we'll go over this together in class. But 35 over 18 cannot simplify. All right, please bring any questions that you have to class, and thanks for watching.